So finally, some more news, but only a bit more on the upcoming Amazon Lord of the Rings series. So for those completely confused about what the hell is happening, I will speed through the basics and get to the recent trailer. Essentially, this series will cover what is known, if you're a big book fan, as the Second Age. Even though Lord of the Rings itself is being adapted, they're essentially adapting the backstory of Lord of the Rings. And if you want to put it very bluntly, they're covering the rise of Sauron. And remember, if you have seen the films or read the books, Sauron is defeated. The Lord of the Rings deals with the return of Sauron. So Sauron already existed. He tried to win before, he was defeated. So what we see in Lord of the Rings and read is him attempting again to grab the One Ring and its power. So in terms of dramatic tension, we kind of know the ending. He's going to lose. So Sauron will be defeated. But of course, there's many other characters, many other little stories. The dilemma is, apparently in terms of the rights, they're restricted to the Lord of the Rings books. Like many people, I thought the Silmarillion was being adapted. And no, that is off limits. So they are confined to just the Lord of the Rings and the books of the Lord of the Rings. And they can use that canonically. They can add a lot of details, but they can't disturb the essential story of the Second Age as is being told to us. The problem is we only really get little bits and pieces of the Second Age within the main text. Characters do talk about it, but it's not a lot. Just to take one thing, for instance, they mention Morgoth, who is essentially the tutor of Sauron and the one who taught him how to become evil and powerful. But really, to know Morgoth, we have to go to the appendices. So I'm wondering, I would assume they also bought the rights to that, but those are not really the main story. So it's unclear if they're being bound by the main story or the main story and the appendices, because the appendices are what provide a lot of details of the Second Age. So it's going to be interesting what the boundaries are, how flexible this thing is, and what they will and will not be able to do with those legal limitations. But thus far, in terms of the trailer, at least visually, they've invested a huge amount of money. And I know already it's becoming very partisan, and you're going to have a huge contingent of hate channels and a lot of people just grifting who don't really know Lord of the Rings, but seeing Star Wars and just hating Star Wars create some popular channels. I know they're going to do the same thing here, but there are some problems here. For one thing, even if you wanted to do that, that's not affecting Amazon. The series has already been sold, so they're going to do 5 seasons. So they're not losing any money. So even if you hate the show or the show doesn't continue, Jeff is not losing any money here. The only question is, are they going to make more money? But they've already made money. So the thing has already been sold technically. So the question is how profitable it will be, not if it is profitable. But in terms of the actual story, I do agree there are worrying signs because Tom Shipley has left the production and he was their basically Lord of the Rings expert that they hired. And they have promised, good or bad, that there's going to be a lot of sex and eroticism in this version of Lord of the Rings. And if you know Tolkien, he just basically ignored that. There is romance, there is love, and technically there's sex. He didn't really address the erotic in his story, so it's not clear how this is going to work with the canon or with his own style and tone. So kind of a mixed feeling in terms of what they're doing. But in terms of the other controversy, right, the alleged black hobbits or whatever, well, again, if you go through the lore carefully, and if you go through the letters and things like that, he didn't think that this was a direct allegory about Earth or its races. But there is some evidence he does have racial imagery. So, like it or not, there are, quote, different races within the actual fictional world. They may be going overboard, but again, within the contract they signed, there's no limitation of adding new people. So it's going to be a question whether canonically the same plot is being followed, but the meaning of it will be too disruptive for some fans. But I expect it's going to be a lot like Book of Boba Fett, really. It's just going to be kind of video game style, heavy action, right? Lots of sex and violence, a la Game of Thrones. Is this alien to Tolkien? Yeah, probably. But again, for people who like the Peter Jackson films, I'm going to watch to see a lot of hypocrisy for people who love those films and didn't really care about the canon. I think those films are incredibly great. I think those films are incredibly great, even though they don't have anything to do with the books. But are probably going to start attacking the series for, quote, not sticking to the books, even though the Jackson films don't do that and they don't care. So probably going to be a lot of hypocrisy all around. But so far, looks great. They have a formidable cast. They're clearly investing a huge amount of money and talent. Does this have anything to do with Tolkien? I doubt it, but will it be an interesting fantasy? Will it be an interesting fantasy series on its own? Yeah, I think so. It'll probably be decent enough. And even in terms of Wheel of Time, I think they're going to put a lot more effort into this one. So, because Wheel of Time was fine, but it was a little lacking in terms of special effects, editing, and certain other things, but that's not going to be the case here. That's not going to be the case with this one. They are clearly dumping a huge amount of resources. So, whatever else, this is going to be a visual spectacle to behold. And there we are with Lord of the Rings by Amazon.